everyone, and welcome to the Poetry Foundation, and welcome to the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My name is Itzel Blancas. I am the Community Programs Manager here at the Foundation. My pronouns are they or she. As a visual description, I'm a light-skinned, brown, non-binary person with curly hair to my shoulders, half pulled up. I wear round green glasses, and I'm wearing a black blazer with a black jumpsuit underneath. Thank you all for being here tonight and continuing to help us stay all safe by keeping your masks on during the program. We would like to start off the program by recognizing that the Poetry Foundation building is situated on the occupied original homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa nations, among other indigenous nations. Indigenous people continue to live here today, and Chicago is home to one of the largest communities of urban indigenous folks in the United States. We gather recognizing that most of us are settlers on colonized land and know that this land acknowledgement is a small part of disrupting and dismantling the colonial systems that we live in. A few quick access notes. Live captioning and ASL interpretations are available on the TV to your left and to my right. If you have any questions or run into any issues, please feel free to find any Poetry Foundation staff member, and we would be more than happy to assist you. Lastly, or semi-lastly, as you entered the space, you would have noticed that between the two doors, there's a door labeled Quiet Space. That is a room that you are welcome to use if you need to step away for a second to take a moment to breathe. Also, we only permit water in this space, but if you want to have a snack or drink something else, you are more than welcome to step into the quiet space and drink there. Finally, we invite you to treat this as a relaxed space. Feel free to do whatever you need to do to make your body and mind a little bit more at ease. Feel free to come and go as you need. If you need to use the restroom, if you need to take a call, please feel free to step outside. In fact, take a second now to take a deep breath in and make yourself 10% more comfortable in the space. And without further ado, I'd be more than happy to introduce Don Evans.
So I have all these notes that begin with telling you to trust the program so that we don't have to repeat everything in the program. And then instead of Adalmi Noriega, we get not Adalmi Noriega. And instead of the order we have the program, we're going to go Harry Mark Petrakis, Bell Thompson, and then Lisel Mueller. So that said, now that I've told you that there's all these things in the program that are not correct, trust the program. We've put a lot of information and details in here about tonight's speakers, about the honorees, about the induction process and the ceremony tonight, the history of it. A complete list of inductees is found here, our important partners, and basically all the things that we would say if you didn't have access to this, but you do. They're all in your seats. Another quick announcement is that we over-reserved the reserve seats. So think of this as like Wrigley Field in April against the Pirates. If you want to improve, your seats, you don't have to pay extra to get into the front. So go ahead and move up. An occasion like tonight is meaningful only if enough people care about it. And that starts with everybody that came tonight to officially induct three great authors into the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame: Harry Mark Petrakis, Bell Thompson, and Lisel Mueller. And the reason why I say, when I first started putting together plans for the Hall of Fame back in 2008 or 9, and it was just an idea, and I remember talking to as many of the great Chicago literary people as I could, and one of them is Bill Savage, who the great professor at Northwestern, writer, expert on all things Chicago literature. And he said, Don, there's a Chicago Literary Hall of Fame if we say there's a Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. And what he meant was that, let's do this, and then, but in order for it to be successful, for people to think it's important and to care about it, we need the audience that's here tonight, the audience that will later find this on online when the Poetry Foundation posts a video. And so thank you all for being here tonight and making this the important occasion that we think it is. The cultural community that helped us to build this ceremony tonight is part of it as well. The Poetry Foundation, I had all these nice things to say about them. I'll keep them a little briefer since they actually had their comments. But 2011, our second class, Harriet Monroe, was part of that induction class. She was part of that induction class because she started and ran what is now and what was then in Chicago in 1912, the most important poetry magazine in the free world. And it continues to be that way today. It's the magazine upon which all other magazines are measured, and it gets about 150,000 submissions every year. And the foundation, which came well after Poetry Magazine, is they enable poets, they showcase poets, they support poets, and they also support other organizations like the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame who are doing similar work. It's part of what makes Chicago such a great city, the organizations, and there's two others that I want to mention tonight. Because it's Chicago, we have not one but two outstanding world-class poetry organizations. The other is the Chicago Poetry Center, or the Poetry Center of Chicago. I hear it both ways, but I think Chicago Poetry Center is correct. Is that right? Chicago Poetry Center. Paul Carroll, along with, among others, Lisel Mueller, founded the organization in 1974. In those first years, they were giving readings at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and they've not ceased giving quality readings in nearly a half century since then. They are also working for the last 20 years plus in partnership with the Chicago Public Schools. They're advocates of poetry. And again, what they do is so important, and they're one of our partners tonight as well. The Guild Literary Complex is, their diverse programming, which has been going on for almost 35 years, has been really important to writers in Chicago. It's been important to readers in Chicago, and their emphasis on diversity goes way back before many other organizations in the city had sort of caught on that this was not, there was not enough diversity and justice in the kind of programming and publications we did. So the Guild Literary Complex is another of the important organizations tonight. And finally, there are the poets, the writers themselves, and also the supporters who are private supporters. And I wanted to say Linda Nemec Foster and her husband, Dr. Anthony Foster, they're right there. First of all, do yourself a favor. Linda and Tony magnanimously supported this event tonight. What they did enables us to do things the way we do them and to keep doing them, and that's really important. So they did us that favor. You could do yourself a favor. You could do yourself a favor and buy one of Linda's 12 collections of poetry, because you would love it, and Linda would like you to do it, I'm sure. Shouldn't have any to sell, but the reason why I bring all these up at the top of the ceremony is because the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame, at its core, is about celebrating the past, the present, and the future of our great literary heritage here in Chicago. But it is not easy, and it's not automatic that great writing will be produced. And so the organizations that I've mentioned, the individuals, they make that happen, because in Chicago, writing does thrive, and it's thrived for a very long time. And in honoring our greatest historical writers like we're doing tonight, we're honoring not only them, but all of the people and organizations that helped them to become who they were and helped to sustain them, and now help to remember their legacy and to keep their work vibrant and important. These writers go through, when you look in the program later, you'll see that we have 55 inductees now, and they're all outstanding, unbelievably accomplished writers. That first class, 2010, we inducted Nelson Algren, Saul Bellow, Gwendolyn Brooks, Lorraine Hansberry, Studs Terkel, and Richard Wright. Over the next decade, we've inducted a lot of other authors who are that well known, who have their own postage stamps, who have schools named after them, and libraries, and, you know, federal holidays. And, you know, there are those that we've honored, but we've also honored a lot of writers who, for various reasons, and not many of them sensible, never achieved that kind of elevated status when they were living, or else they did, but then they kind of faded from the public memory. I'm thinking of writers like Leon Forrest, Carolyn Rogers, Salma Rivera, Marita Bonner, and Margaret Eyre Barnes, all in their time among the most important of their generation, produced work that is still viable and important today. And so that's one of the things that makes me most proud, is that we're not doing anything for any other reason than merit. And if that merit happens to be for somebody who was famous enough to get their own postage stamp, then we go ahead and do that. But if it was somebody who didn't sell a lot of books or get the credit they deserved, we are still honoring them. So we have this rigorous process. More than 100 of our greatest literary figures in Chicago have participated in nominating and selecting, debating, discussing, until we come up with the most elite of our writers, and that's who we have today. So tonight, let's just really quickly give a round of applause for Harry Mark Petrakis, Lisel Mueller, Bell Thompson, because tonight they will join that canon. Okay, so I'm going to do short bios. So everybody, you know, follow along in your program. You should be now around page 5. Okay, they're in alphabetical order, but I think you can figure that part out. Maria Karamitsos is a good friend of the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame and mine. She was a participant in the ceremony in 2014 at the National Museum, or National Hellenic Museum, when we honored Harry with the Lifetime Achievement Award we call the Fuller. And now that Harry has passed, we are moving him into the ranks of the greatest historical writers. Maria is a journalist, an advocate in the Greek community, and she's going to present the statue to Harry's middle son, John, after she gives some remarks about Harry. So Maria, and then she'll hand it off to John.
Good evening. Thank you to the Poetry Foundation, the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame, and Don Evans for inviting me here this evening. As a writer and as a Greek American, it is an incredible honor to be here to talk about one of my literary heroes, Harry Mark Petrakis. It's strange to say the late Harry Mark Petrakis, as one of the greatest storytellers of our time, left us just 1 year ago at the age of 97. The author of some 24 books left an indelible mark on the literary landscape, but more so on his readers. I'm a huge fan, and I'm proud to have known him. Born in St. Louis to Greek immigrant parents from the island of Crete and raised here in the Windy City, he was a favorite son of Chicago's Greek community and the Greek community at large. I always recall hearing, "Petrakis put us on the map," and he gave us a voice. He gave us a loud, booming voice. His characters, foreign, yet so familiar, helped to usher Greek Americans from the shadows of the racial discrimination of the 1950s and 60s and into the mainstream, Yes, Greeks and other Southern Europeans endured discrimination and worked tirelessly to be accepted into society while still holding on to our culture and traditions. Petrakis' stories could have been about any group, but in making them Greek, he showed the world that we were all the same, people in search of the American dream. We had family connections. My great-grandmother and his mother, Presbytera Stella Petrakis, volunteered together in the Red Cross, and my mother performed in Presbytera's Greek dance troupe. So I'd heard many stories about this family and their famous son. Now, fast forward to the 1990s and another generation. I discovered Petrakis' books and became an instant fan. I attended my first of many book readings, where he, with his beloved wife Diana at his side, entranced the audience with his sonorous voice. You could sit for hours listening to him read. Over the years, I interviewed him for several Greek American publications. We had an ongoing communication, and he always encouraged my writing. When I told him I was penning a novel set in Greektown and exploring old world notions of shame, since what will people say is the immigrant family code of conduct, he cheered me on. When I needed a strong, no-nonsense female character, I based it on his mother. He said he was honored and wanted to read it, but sadly I didn't finish it before he passed away. Petrakis started writing in the 1940s, and after nearly a decade of rejections, received his first publication in The Atlantic. The short story, Pericles on 31st Street, captured the essence of the Greek mind. Simonakis, a peanut peddler, would take breaks from his peanut selling to enjoy a glass of wine at a nearby pub. The patrons mused that he must be rich as he took his time drinking his wine and missed customers that passed his cart. "It's not a case of wealth," Simonakis said. "There is a time for labor and a time for leisure. A man must have time to sit and think. This made Greece great." His breakout was the 1966 New York Times bestseller, A Dream of Kings, which was adapted for the big screen, starring Anthony Quinn and Irene Pappas. Petrakis told me that the lead character, Matsoukas, was one of his favorites. He revisited him later in the sequel, Ghost of the Sun. Petrakis wrote novels, short story collections, biographies, and several memoirs. His journal of a novel divulged not only his process, but also his humanity. Though he continued to write until the end of his life, he published his final book, the memoir, Song of My Life, in 2015. It's perhaps his most personal and most reflective. His short stories and essays have appeared in countless publications. He received numerous accolades and awards, including the coveted O. Henry Award and the Carl Sandburg Award. He held honorary doctorates from at least 6 universities. From 1991 to 92, he held the Nikos Kazantzakis Chair in Modern Greek Studies at San Francisco State University, a dream for him as a Cretan and as a fan. And in 2014, he received the Fuller Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. What made Petrakis' stories so endearing was it his ability to tap into the everyman. The 2 years of his youth he spent bedridden with tuberculosis, in which he read book after book to pass the time. His life as the son of a priest, his work in the steel mills and other jobs, it was all the above. In one interview, he told me that his Greek ancestry was a wellspring of inspiration. "Not that I think being Greek is better," he said, "but what writer could ask for anything richer than our past? Than that from small civilizations, islands, sprang a culture that still dominates Western civilization today," he continued. "That conflict between the grandeur of the past and the poverty of the present is the stuff of drama and conflict." This propelled him to write novels like The Hour of the Bell, set against the backdrop of the Greek War of Independence, weaving his characters into the stunning and often brutal historical facts. He called it his War and Peace. Petrakis believed wholeheartedly in writing what you know. He didn't consider himself a Greek writer. He said, "I write about human beings, and most happen to be Greek. They could be anything. I write about love, death, hatred. There's no such thing as Greek sorrow or German joy. These things are individual to a character." He once told me that he is a part of every character he created. This makes them all so real, so relatable. His modern Greek tragedies gave voice to immigrant stories, the search for the American dream. His characters were multidimensional, deeply flawed. His expressive prose powerful, moving, yet always accessible. A few years back, after yet another interview, he sent me this note brimming with his signature humor. "That was a wonderful story you wrote about that Greek-American writer. What was his name? He sounds almost saintly, and I know the guy. He's no saint. I also know he believes that too much praise in a man's lifetime leaves nothing for his eulogy. Anyway, he thanks you for your friendship. Signed, Charalabos." Not to worry, my friend. Upon Petrakis' passing, former Chicago Tribune book editor John Blades was quoted saying, "I'd always thought of Harry as the third man in a Chicago gang of three, behind James T. Farrell and Nelson Algren. Harry Mark Petrakis' spirit lives on in his work. As we Greeks say, may his memory be eternal." Here to accept the award on behalf of the Petrakis family is Harry's son, John.
Let me begin by thanking the Poetry Foundation for hosting this august event, Maria for her kind and effusive words, and the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame for opening its gilded doors to my late father. There have been very many lovely things written and said about my dad tonight and over the last few weeks, so I thought I would switch gears and talk just a bit about him as a father and a grandfather and an uncle and a family patriarch and a lover of language. When I was a boy growing up in South Shore and attending a Greek Orthodox parochial school, I came home one afternoon extremely angry about something that had transpired that day. When I walked in the front door, my anger bubbled over, and I suddenly shouted, "I can't take this shit." No sooner was the swear word out of my mouth when I saw my father standing in the middle of the living room, glowering at me. I knew there were going to be consequences. As all the unpleasant options ran through my head, my father went to the bookcase and pulled down a copy of Cyrano de Bergerac, reading me the section where a boor calls Cyrano's nose, quote, "damn big." Cyrano proceeds to dress him down while wielding his sword, enumerating with flair all the clever things the boor could have said instead that would have cut more deeply. The one I remember best is, "When it bleeds, the Red Sea." My father believed in the inherent beauty of words, and he saw the sentences and paragraphs they could form as rivers flowing to a spiritual place. He especially loved descriptive words and the way those words could force us to immediately stop what we were doing and listen closely. Towards the end of his life, as part of his occupational therapy to strengthen his voice muscles, he would speak aloud the poem Lament by Dylan Thomas, which he knew by heart. "When I was a windy boy and a bit, and the black spit of the chapel fold sighed the old ramrod dying of women." Kurt Vonnegut once said of my father's writing, "I have often thought what a wonderful basketball team could be formed from Petrakis characters. Every one of them is at least 14 feet tall." In truth, my father had mixed feelings about that quote, which kept reappearing on the dust jackets of his books. But there was a certain truth to the observation. My dad's characters seemed big because the words they spoke were solid and strong. He also loved words because it was the words themselves that formed stories. My father was a wonderful craftsman and a highly skilled writer, but he was first and foremost a storyteller who knew a good story when he saw one. When my brothers and I were boys, my father would lie in bed next to us at night and read from the storybook version of one of the greatest stories of all time, The Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. My father would assume all the roles, loud and booming for Achilles, low and crafty for Odysseus, soft and mournful for King Priam. His embrace of good stories also applied to the stage and screen. He loved the work of August Wilson and never missed a local production of one of his plays. And no one who ever came into his house was ever permitted to leave without watching John Ford's How Green Was My Valley, my father's favorite film. I got an especially close look at my father's love of words and story when we worked together on a screen adaptation of his novel Ghost of the Sun, which Maria mentioned, which is the sequel to his most famous book, A Dream of Kings. Though the project never came to fruition, it was nonetheless a great joy to collaborate. Years later, we would jokingly describe the process thusly. I would write a scene and he would rewrite it, inserting a panoply of his large descriptive words. I would then take them out, arguing that in screenwriting, which I teach, you must allow the camera to do the heavy lifting. He would agree. He took out the large words, only to replace them in the next draft with a new slate of large descriptive words. My father was a big presence in our lives, and he is sorely missed by our large family. As my older brother said of my father, he took up a lot of space wherever he went, and now that he is gone, a great void has formed. But luckily, we have our memories, and along with that, we have his writing. To that end, I would like to close with the ending to The Song of Rodanthe, my all-time favorite Harry Mark Petrakis short story. And also, I am proud to note, a story that my son Lucas, who was here tonight, used for his English classes when he was recently teaching in China. The story, which my father wrote in the 1950s, concerns an unmarried young Greek woman named Rodanthe, who was being pressured to marry by her father and brothers. She rejects all the suitors they present, but one day in early spring, as she is hanging laundry in the backyard, she meets a young man with a piercing whistle. Rodanthe is smitten, and after a few more chaste encounters, she finally tells her family about the man. They explode in anger, which causes Rodanthe to cry out, admitting that she doesn't know his name, but she knows she loves him. They were sorry afterwards. Papa came to my room and kissed me and cried a little. Then Marco and Nico and Kostas came and touched my hair gently with their big hands and tried to speak with their eyes. I forgave them because I knew how much they cared for me, and I consented to let Nico wait with me in the morning to see the young man. But he did not come the next morning. I thought perhaps he knew about Nico, and the following day I waited alone. I waited in the yard with the spring wild and tangled about my head and the blossoms breaking on the branches of the trees and the earth flowing it alive. He did not come. And the spring passed into summer and the leaves grew long and green on the trees and the sunflowers bloomed among the stones and the birds were everywhere. The speckled robins and the gray starlings and the brownish redwings. After a while, I knew Papa and the others thought I had made it all up, that I had grown weary of the procession of sad suitors and made the story up to keep others away. They do not understand that someday he will come back. On a morning when the green hearts of the lilac bushes tremble awake in the wind, when the first slim green buds break upon the branches of the maples and the catalpas. He will come striding along with his hands in his pockets and his reckless head flung back and the wild, jubilant whistle ringing from his lips. And I will feel once again that the early green buds and the first fragile flowers and the soft new winds have suddenly burst into song. Thank you so much.
And as I said, there's been a little rearranging of the order. Beverly A. Cook and Raquel Flores-Clemons. Beverly is going to present for Bell Thompson. She is an archivist and a librarian at the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection of Afro-American Literature and History. And Raquel is the head of that collection. They have spent more time on Bell Thompson's legacy, her papers, her work. They've written about her, they've studied her. So we have the two greatest experts on around on Bell Thompson. So first Bev, and then she'll give the trophy to, or the statue to Raquel on behalf of the Harsh Collection.
Wow, that's a lot to live up to. Okay. Good evening. I am Beverly Cook, and I am a librarian and archivist for the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection of Afro-American History and Literature. Our collection grew out of the vision of Vivian Gordon Harsh back in 1932 to create a special Negro collection for the growing population of Bronzeville. African Americans were migrating in large numbers from the South, trying to escape Jim Crowism, lynching, racism, and hard times, all headed north, seeking a better future. I want to thank Don Evans and the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame, the Poetry Foundation, and tonight's audience for the opportunity to talk about Bell Thompson. Don has given you an excellent biography of Thompson. It speaks of her early life and career, her tenacious personality, and determination to make a better life for herself and others by using her gifts as a writer and a watcher. We have processed her papers, and the opening of these records will shed light on her life, on her time, the Black press, on feminism, and on the Chicago Black Renaissance. Her life will demonstrate that the past informs the present and impacts the future. Of course, anything that we say will be our own interpretation of her life and work. Tonight, I would like Bell to speak for herself. At the end of American Daughter, her autobiography in 1946, she says, "I know that there is still good in the world, that way down underneath, most Americans are fair, that my people and your people can work together and live together in peace and happiness, if they but have the opportunity to know and understand each other." When the book was republished in 1967, Thompson used her sly humor in the foreword to say, "Usually an autobiography is written at the end of a long and distinguished career, but not taking any chances. I wrote mine first, then began to live." Thompson used her wit and humor throughout her life. I believe that these tools became survival mechanisms for her to traverse a world that was often lonely and unfamiliar to her. I found a folder in her papers titled Last Will and Testament, dated July 11, 1974. In it, she says, "If I have missed anybody or left too little, I'm sorry. We'll try to do better next time." And she goes on to say, "These are my burial arrangements. Keep it simple, short, and modest, meaning conservatively priced casket, and send me back to the family plot in Driscoll, North Dakota." She never got over that first love of prairies of North Dakota. This last reading is from a 1977 speech she gave to a group of students at Bismarck Junior College in North Dakota. She called this speech Full Circle. "I have come full circle. After nearly 50 years, I am home again. I have been asked to talk with you this evening about my experiences here and how they contributed to whatever successes I may have subsequently attained. Farm life was the excitement of bronco busting in the old corral, hay in time in the summer, and swarms of mosquito and flying ants in the winter, riding home in a school rig, eating leftover frozen jelly sandwiches from dinner buckets that once held served. The first money I ever earned was from trapping gophers. The county paid a maximum and magnificent bounty of 3 cents a tail. The only girl and the youngest member of the clan, my only friend, was our dog Sport, who protected me from the barnyard fowl, and the boys had taught to chase me. In high school, I discovered a whole new world of activities. If I excelled in athletics, it was those years of running from the roosters and ganders that had given me the gift of speed. I began to write when I discovered that it was much easier to make up my own poems and stories than to memorize others. Now let us jump to 1933. And she says, alien to the culture of my own people, adjustment to ghetto life in Chicago came hard. I was an oddball. My nasal Midwestern accent was laced with Scandinavian and Hebrew phrases. I couldn't even snap my finger like the smallest street urchin. Names of Black schools and colleges were foreign to me, and when I denied having come from the Southland, as most Blacks did in those days, I was accused of lying. In a sense, I was less accepted among Blacks there than I had been in an all-white community here. For a long time, I hated Chicago, hated the dirty streets, the inveritability of draft apartment buildings with too much heat and too few windows. I was a racial misfit, caught between two worlds, one white, the other Black. I was unaware when I chose journalism as a career that white media jobs for Blacks or women were rare. For Black women, I soon found they were non-existent. I found my roots long before Alex Haley found his. Found them through the eyes of an African guide who led me through the slave dungeons of Christiansborg Castle. Found them on the bluff above the sea that for more than 300 years separated me from him. There, this is my heritage. Here is where I live, where I learned the value of honesty and the pride that comes from a hard day's work. Poverty, deprivation, yes, but these incentives were motivated to success, as was the encouragement I received from you, my friends, my neighbors, my teachers. I have indeed come full circle. This time, I have come to say thank you. Now I'm going to call my colleague to the podium with me, Raquel Flores-Clemons, so that I can present her. Raquel is new to the Chicago Public Library and to the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection. She started with us in December, and it has been a whirlwind. I present this statue to you on behalf of the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection.
And we accept it together.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I guess I should take this off. Thank you, and please stay up here because it's important that she's up here because she's been the main steward of the collection, and I am new to the organization, so you need to be up here as well. So thank you, Beverly. And I'm Raquel Flores-Clemons. I am the head of the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection. We are the largest African-American history and literature collection in the region. We're the official repository of Bell Thompson's personal papers. While we are not her family, we are akin to her in spirit as the stewards of her collection, and as lifelong Chicagoans, both of us, as Black women, we do not take this honor, the weight and honor of being in this position to accept this award lightly. Thompson was a change maker and a trailblazer, and walking very strong in her identity as a Black woman, understanding entering a profession where it's dominated by men, dominated by white men. She knew that the cards were stacked against her, but she continued to press forward and forged a path for herself and also for others. As a pioneering photojournalist for Ebony and an international editor for Johnson Publishing Company for almost 30 years, she was also an important figure in the Chicago Renaissance. And that's where her ties to the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection, or to Vivian Harsh specifically, where that started. And that spans nearly 50 years. Vivian Harsh, who I like to call the people's librarian, because she was the librarian for many noted figures, Harold Washington, Gwendolyn Brooks, Timeo Black. She was also Chicago Public Library's first librarian to head a library. She was the branch manager, director of that space, of the Cleveland Hall branch. And so in that role, she created space for the community to engage, to learn, to grow, and to learn from one another. And a lot of creatives of that era met at that space, met at the Hall branch, and that was the space that she engaged with. And so many people of the Chicago Black Renaissance era, they were not only folks she was writing about and writing with, but also those were a part of her circle of friends and family in the life she created for herself here in Chicago. And so just so thankful for the work that she did, because it offered a fuller array of Black life and I always say Black folks are not a monolith. And so the work that she did definitely supported that. And not only was the Hall branch her community library, but she also was involved with it. She was a participating member of the community and served on committees and literary forums and that sort of thing. So her papers were donated in '84, and the rest were bequeathed upon her death. And it's over 100 linear feet. It's a lot. It's a lot, and it took some time for it to get processed, but it's done. And the finding aid is available now online, and so it consists of just a vast array of materials, manuscripts, correspondences, many records around Johnson Publishing, her professional home for so many years. And we are just standing in the expectation of the great scholarship and creative influence that will come from scholars and artists and community members alike by engaging with her legacy in this way. So thank you again, Don, for having us and for inviting us to participate in this event as we continue to elevate her legacy and as well as the legacy of the Chicago literary greats. Thank you.
Lisel Mueller, we've got 3 parts to it because we've got a reading in the middle, and we're going to start with the presentation by Elizabeth Metzger Sampson. She is a wonderful poet, but she's also the director of the Chicago Poetry Center. Marty McConnell, who I wish I had brought this poetry anthology up here. I just edited this great anthology of Chicago poetry, and Marty has a poem in there because I loved her poem more than all the other ones that aren't in there. And she is going to read a couple of Lisel's poems tonight, and then she is going to hand off the statue, and there'll be no mistake this time. She'll grab the right statue, and she'll give it to Lucy Mueller, the oldest daughter of Lisel. So let's start with Beth Sampson.
Good evening, everyone. It's exciting to be back in person. As visual description, I am a white person wearing green glasses. I have short brown hair. I'm wearing a blue jumpsuit. It's an honor to be part of Lisel Mueller's induction to the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. And as Don mentioned, Marty will be reading some poems. The poems I'm going to reference in here are the poems you'll get to hear right after. Lisel Mueller's literary signature is complexity in small poetic packages. And it's best summed up in her words. There's a quote of Mueller's in which she states, "Poetry, for me, is the answer to how does one stay sane while private lives are being ransacked by public events? It's something that hangs over your head all the time." And how does one do that? Through poetry. You can, as Mueller writes in When I Am Asked, place your grief in the mouth of language, right next to an unbothered, exuberant June day of blooms, and hold the two side by side. You can, as Mueller writes in Palindrome, imagine your mother in a galaxy where time moves in the opposite direction, as it does here, passing her in time as she slowly becomes younger. From Mueller's pen, the mouth of language is expansive and nuanced. She considers the breathtaking ecstasy of being alive in this body while you are alive in that body, and pairs that with the weight of acknowledging the tragedy that abounds all around us. Lisel's public literary history begins around age 40, and she had already lived quite a life at that point. Her family fled Germany and the Nazi regime as political dissident refugees when she was 15, and they ultimately settled in the Midwest and into a new tongue. One of Mueller's many contributions is to have written the grief and pain of a German population in English. Having fled state violence, grown into a new language on a new continent, Mueller also became a mother and found, with the passing of her own mother when she was 29, a catalyst into writing. Her books captured readers because they hold the complex beauty, wonder, and trauma of our existence. And the literary world acknowledged her contribution with many accolades, including the National Book Award for The Need to Hold Still, the Carl Sandburg Award, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, and the Pulitzer Prize for Alive Together. Her literary legacy continues past her poetry and her work as a translator as well. She is a founder of the Poetry Center, the organization which I currently direct. Mueller and her co-founders birthed the organization as a response to censorship and the marginalization of queer writing in Chicago in the mid-20th century. And one byline for Lisel could be, a poet flees impossible violence, past country and tongue, arrives in a new land and language, and begins the work of opening spaces for the voices suppressed therein. Her legacy continues in the work we do at the organization nearly 50 years later. The organization holds those early values as core to our platforming of marginalized voices and to a poetry program that is in CPS classrooms across Chicago. I see her impact in the poetry written by the young people of Chicago today, language held in so many mouths, facilitated by the organization she founded. Her impact extends to adult writers through her many years of work as writing faculty and mentor to many poets, many of the exceptional poets of today, and still through the Lisel Mueller Scholarship intended to support writers who are balancing a writing life with the parental duties of childcare, founded by Linda Nemec Foster. I met Lisel once and was grateful for the chance to thank her for founding the Poetry Center and for her literary works. We met at the invitation of the German Consulate of Chicago as they awarded her the Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany in 2019. In a turn that feels fitting for all the paradox that Mueller's work deftly holds, the German government awarded her its highest citizen honor late in her life, the same country that had stripped her and her family of their citizenship in her early years. To see this revolution in time was to watch a poem of Mueller's come to life. Nothing is simple, everything is simple. Mueller's literary voice and legacy carry an electric charge for change and a quiet call to contemplation. As she writes, she holds a mirror to our multitudes and cups the vast everything of humanity into the palm of her hand and the stanza of a poem. As another way to celebrate and honor Lisel Mueller's legacy and literary life today, let us listen to her poems read live. Please join me in welcoming to the stage my friend and colleague, Marty McConnell.
By way of visual description, I'm a white woman with a lot of gray hair. A black dress with flowers, and a brass necklace with a labradorite stone. I'm going to read two poems. The first is Palindrome. And there's an epigraph at the beginning. There is less difficulty, indeed no logical difficulty at all, in imagining two portions of the universe, say two galaxies, in which time goes one way in one galaxy and the opposite way in the other. Intelligent beings in each galaxy would regard their own time as forward and time in the other galaxy as backward. Martin Gardner in Scientific American. Somewhere now she takes off the dress I am putting on. It is evening in the anti-world where she lives. She is 45 years away from her death, the hole which spit her out into pain, impossible at first, later easing, going, gone. She has unlearned much by now. Her skin is firming, her memory sharpens, her hair has grown glossy. She sees without glasses, she falls in love easily. Her husband has lost his shuffle, they laugh together, their money shrinks, but their ardor increases. Soon her second child will be young enough to fight its way into her body and change its life to monkey, to frog, to tadpole, to cluster of cells, to tiny island, to nothing. She is making a list. Things I will need in the past. Lipstick, shampoo, transistor radio, Sergeant Pepper, acne cream, 5-year diary with a lock. She is eager, having heard about adolescent love and the freedom of children. She wants to read Crime and Punishment and ride on a roller coaster without getting sick. I think of her as she will be at 15, awkward, too serious. In the mirror, I see she uses her left hand to write, her other to open a jar. By now, our lives should have crossed. Somewhere, sometime, we must have passed one another like going and coming trains, with both of us looking the other way. And this is When I Am Asked. When I am asked how I began writing poems, I talk about the indifference of nature. It was soon after my mother died, a brilliant June day, everything blooming. I sat on a gray stone bench in a lovingly planted garden, but the daylilies were as deaf as the ears of drunken sleepers, and the roses curved inward. Nothing was black or broken, and not a leaf fell, and the sun blared endless commercials for summer holidays. I sat on a gray stone bench, ringed with the ingenue faces of pink and white impatience, and placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would grieve with me. It's my honor to present this award to Lisel's daughter, Lucy.
Good evening, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you to the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame and the Poetry Foundation. Thank you, Marty, for the lovely reading. I am a white female, and I have shoulder-length reddish-brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses, 64 years old, and I'm wearing all red dress and red shoes tonight. So, and I will just be speaking very shortly tonight. But my mother passed away, it was in 2020, And she didn't make it to Mr. Petrakis' age, but she made it to 96, so very close. Um, and really miss her. But I think to me, the most special thing about her work is that it seems to touch so many people from so many walks of life. Her work is very accessible. People enjoy it because they can understand it, they can relate to it. And while there's a complexity to it, there's also a simplicity that I think people really relate to. In my mother's work, in addition to some of the things that have been mentioned, it has been used in theater, it has been used in opera, it has been used along with dance. So her words have been used by other diverse art forms, and I'm very proud of that, the incorporation. And myself, I've run across her work in really unexpected places. I was on the internet doing some meditation, and Rupert Spira, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with him, but he was using her work as a meditative piece. I've found her work on YouTube, along with music, of course. And then I've also found her work on a dating site where someone was using her poetry. So to me, that just shows, how many people she's touched. And she was also a lovely human being, a very warm and compassionate person, and a good friend to many, a wonderful teacher, and much beloved by her students, including Linda. Give her another mention. But again, thank you very much, and I'm very honored to accept this award.
Thank you, everybody. Listen, before I forget, we have lots of extras of these. We get lots of extra ones because there are people that aren't here tonight that want them, and we mail them out to them, and they get them. And then for years, people will ask for them occasionally, and instead of going back to the printer, we get them. Here's the thing that annoys me, though, and it's going to happen tonight, too. Some of you will get home, and you will then call me or email me and say, Don, I'd like to get 5 extra programs. And then I have to package them up and go to the post office and bring them. We have a lot of them. Barry can give them to you. There's a whole box of them here. So get as many as you want, especially the Muellers and the Petrakises and the Harsh collection. Take as many as you want, and then don't call me tomorrow. We're pretty much done, except I just wanted to really quickly run through again my thank yous, because it really, the Hall of Fame is a tiny nonprofit organization, and without working with people and having the support we do, we couldn't do things the way we do them. I mean, this is starts with the Poetry Foundation, of course, our wonderful host tonight. Please look at some of their wonderful programs at www.poetryfoundation.org. Our other partners tonight, the Guild Literary Complex, you can find them at guildcomplex.org, and the Poetry Center at www.poetrycenter.org. Linda Nemec Foster and Dr. Anthony Foster. By now, it seems like I shouldn't mention them anymore because everybody else has, but their generosity really helped us tonight. And thank you for all they do for the cultural community and for us tonight. Our board of directors, a couple of them are here tonight. Amy Danzer, our board president. Barbara Eagle is here. Our associate board, our interns like Dan Carroll, who's here tonight, and Also Calvin Magnan, who is not an intern, but he's going to be one this summer. They're out here helping tonight. Ellie Martin, who is our social media coordinator. All those people are constantly doing so much work and getting very little credit. Barry Young, if you don't know Barry Young, you haven't been around any of the Chicago cultural events. He's at every single festival. He's at every big event, reading. He's volunteering. He does so much for the Hall of Fame, including being the primary proofreader of this. I can't tell you, once I gave Barry the proofs, he, like every 3 hours, he would send me new corrections and more corrections, to the point where I was like, you know, isn't it good enough, Barry? And he's like, no, we gotta cross-check, and we gotta, so Barry, thank you for everything you do. Rich Kono, he put together the slideshow here. He does so much for our website and other things. Hannah Jennings for her lovely work making our website current and beautiful. Jeff Wagner, who designed this program, and Breaker Press, who printed it. They do so much for us. And then finally, our ongoing support that we get from the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation and the Illinois Arts Council Association. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.